Hey there everyone, Seja here. Hope you're having a really good Saturn day. Just wanted to take a little bit of time to share with you a little bit about Saturn. And it's just interesting, when you look at the names of the days of the week and how 7 days of the week directly correspond to the 7 inner planets. Of course, Saturday relates to Saturn, Saturn day. Sunday, day of the sun, Moon day, Monday, and the rest of them really relate more to the Norse mythology and some of the archetypes we see in that mythological tradition. But yeah, so Saturn is kind of, generates a lot of fear in people. A lot of, Saturn kind of has this little bit of a difficult relationship to a lot of people. A lot of people, traditionally in astrology, it was seen as the greater malefic, meaning that it brought about a lot of challenge, a lot of difficulty, and oftentimes, in terms of medical astrology, can bring about a lot of sickness in people. But I always kind of like to take the perspective that planets or signs or any kind of energetic force isn't innately good or bad. They just are. And it has a lot to do with our own individual capacity to navigate through that energy with as much grace as we can, and learning how to use that energy and integrate that energy into our lives in a healthy way. So in terms of medical astrology, Saturn governs the bones. And it's interesting that we see in Eastern traditions of spirituality and of healing that they say that our karma is stored in our bones. And interestingly enough, in Western astrology, the bones are ruled by Saturn, and Saturn governs karma. And so this planet has this capacity to bring up some of the deepest kind of foundational core aspects of our healing process and bringing them to the surface and making us have to deal with them and process them. Many of you that have been through your Saturn return know that it is this very deep and profound restructuring process that happens. So Saturn has a lot to do with kind of the foundations of our life and the structure of our life and our bones and teeth and connective tissue and tendons and ligaments. So some of my favorite herbs that correspond to Saturn, my top Saturnian remedy that I really, really love is horsetail. This is a classic Saturn plant from the Western alchemical tradition. And some of the signatures that we see in horsetail that bear some correspondences to Saturn, first of all, is the rings. If you just go on Google Images and take a look at horsetail, you'll see that there's these kind of the way the fronds unfurl on it, it creates these rings around the plant, and you see just rings going all the way up it. And of course, Saturn is the ringed planet, right? And those rings really represent limitation. It represents boundaries, and how horsetail has that signature too. And when we look at the chemistry of horsetail, we see that it has a high content of silicic acid or silica. And silica is a mineral that has this profound impact and influence upon the connective tissues of the body. So all of our tendons and ligaments and hair and skin and nails, horsetail really helps to strengthen that mineral matrix of the body, and therefore kind of those foundational structural tissues of our physical bodies. And so that's just a really cool correspondence there as well. And one important thing about horsetail is that you have to be really careful as far as when you harvest it. If horsetail is harvested too late, the mineral content can actually be too high and can lead to certain mineral deposits or calcifications or potential creation of stones in the kidneys. So you do have to be careful with when horsetail is harvested, but that's just another great signature of Saturn, right? That it can accumulate so many minerals that it can deposit them within our body and actually create a symptom. So horsetail is one of my favorite Saturnian plants. One of my other really favorite Saturnian remedies is comfrey. We see comfrey is another very powerful tissue building remedy in the way that it strengthens connective tissue. It's a vulnerary, so it actually strengthens and builds and weaves proteins together and builds up the structural components of the body. And in that way, it's used for wound healing and prolapsed organs and what the physiomedicals would call a relaxation tissue state. And one of the things about Saturn is that it astringes, it tonifies, it creates more structure and boundary. So if you think of a tissue that's kind of become lackadaisical and loose and flaccid, your astringent remedies help to bring that tone and that structure back to the tissues so they ultimately stay in place and can perform their function more effectively. So there's a lot that can be said about Comfrey. Just a couple other Saturnian signatures that you'll notice with it. First of all, the purple flowers, oftentimes kind of purple-white coloration in plants we'll see corresponds to Saturn, as well as just the sheer mass of Comfrey and how it has that dry, kind of rough texture to the leaves. And then you'll see that it grows up. It's like Comfrey grows up too fast for its own good, right? It's like it grows up and then it gets so tall and heavy and then it just falls over and goes back to the earth. And I think that's a really beautiful signature for Saturn and kind of that Saturn-Jupiter polarity where Jupiter expands and radiates and wants to grow and get really big. And in that way, it can lose touch with the earth and lose touch with its root. And that's where that Saturnian force comes in and kind of brings you back down. And so we've worked with Comfrey a lot and seeing it be having the specific affinity for kind of this archetype of people that have grown up too fast or people that have kind of had this too far-reaching vision, and then things kind of like Saturn comes down and grounds them back into what can sometimes be a harsh reality. So again, there's a lot that can be said about Comfrey, but those are just some of the ways that we see it manifesting some of those Saturnian influences, and just as well as kind of the overall safety consideration about internal use of Comfrey, in that it has been shown to generate some liver issues, some liver cancer in some studies. And of course, cancer, while having other rulers, has some relationship to Saturn in medical astrology. So anyways, I just wanted to share a little bit about Saturn with you here on this Saturn day. Again, we've got a 3-part video series there at astrologicalherbalism.com. Head over there, put your name and email in, and feel free to check out some of these other free videos that I'm putting out. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.